Welcome back to the Future Archive. Today, we examine archived broadcasts from June 30, 2026, a day when cryptocurrency made a president a billionaire. A plane crash in Beijing raised more questions than answers, and the U.S. Supreme Court reaffirmed a constitutional principle. We'll also explore a peculiar military exercise in the Australian bush and a privacy update from WhatsApp. As ever, the past is a foreign country, and we are merely its tourists. The first story. Trump's crypto windfall, $1 billion first year back in office. In 2026, former and then returned President Donald Trump capitalized on the booming cryptocurrency market, earning over $1 billion within his first year back in the White House. This financial milestone was achieved through a combination of personal investments, strategic partnerships, and the launch of a Trump-branded digital token. The move sparked intense debate about conflicts of interest, as critics argued that a sitting president profiting from volatile and unregulated markets raised ethical concerns. Supporters, however, framed it as a savvy embrace of innovation. The windfall highlighted the growing intersection of politics, personal wealth, and emerging technologies in the mid-2020s, a trend that would only accelerate in the decades to come. This moment in 2026 was a turning point in the normalization of cryptocurrency within mainstream politics. By 2050, of course, such financial maneuvers by public officials seem almost quaint, like judging a fish for being wet. The episode also underscored how, even then, humanity's favorite strategy was to address ethical dilemmas only after they became impossible to ignore. The lack of clear regulations around presidential investments in speculative assets would later be cited as a contributing factor to the Great Spreadsheet Crisis of 2034, when an intern, allegedly, misfiled a few too many transactions. $1 billion later, and the only thing more volatile than crypto was the public's trust. The second story. Mystery in Beijing. Plane crash into skyscraper met with official silence. On an otherwise ordinary day in June 2026, a plane crashed into a high-rise building in Beijing, China. The incident, which caused significant damage and casualties, was met with an immediate and near-total blackout of information from Chinese authorities. No official statements were released about the cause, the number of victims, or even the type of aircraft involved. International media outlets scrambled for details, but the lack of transparency only fueled speculation, ranging from mechanical failure to more sinister explanations. The event became a stark reminder of the challenges of obtaining reliable information in a country where state control over media was absolute. This incident exemplified the broader tensions of the 2020s, a world increasingly interconnected yet still divided by walls of secrecy. From the vantage point of 2050, it's clear this was not an anomaly but a pattern. Authoritarian regimes of the era often treated information like currency, hoarded, controlled, and doled out only when it served their interests. The crash also foreshadowed the eventual global push for aerial safety reforms, though, as with most reforms, they were implemented only after the body count made ignoring the problem more costly than addressing it. In the absence of facts, conspiracy theories fill the void. And they always bring snacks. The third story. U.S. and Japanese troops conduct secret climate resilience drill in the Australian outback. In mid-2026, residents of a remote area in the Australian outback were baffled to discover U.S. and Japanese military personnel conducting what appeared to be a large-scale exercise in their backyard. The operation, initially shrouded in secrecy, was later revealed to be a joint climate resilience drill. The exercise was designed to test the ability of Allied forces to operate in extreme environmental conditions, a growing concern as climate change began to reshape global military priorities. Analysts were quick to note the irony of nations historically reliant on fossil fuels suddenly preparing for a world where those fuels were no longer viable or politically acceptable. This was a fascinating snapshot of the 2020s, a decade when the military-industrial complex began to pivot from traditional warfare to climate adaptation. By 2050, such drills are commonplace, though the Australian outback remains a favorite location, partly for its harsh conditions, partly because the locals have stopped asking questions. The exercise also highlighted a recurring theme of the era. Solutions to existential problems were often developed in secret by institutions more accustomed to conflict than cooperation. One might even call it humanity's favorite strategy, preparing for the future as if it were a war. The best way to prepare for climate change: pretend it's an invasion. The fourth story. U.S. Supreme Court upholds birthright citizenship, delivering a blow to Trump. On June 30, 2026, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in a landmark decision to uphold the constitutional principle of birthright citizenship, dealing a significant blow to then-President Trump's efforts to end the practice. The case had been a focal point of Trump's immigration policies, which sought to deny citizenship to children born in the U.S. to undocumented parents. The court's decision, which came as a surprise to many observers given its conservative majority, reaffirmed the 14th Amendment's guarantee of citizenship to all persons born on U.S. soil. The ruling was celebrated as a rare bipartisan victory for civil rights in an increasingly polarized political landscape. This decision was a reminder that even in the most divided of times, some principles remain stubbornly resistant to erosion. By 2050, the ruling is often cited in legal textbooks as an example of institutional resilience, though, as we know, institutions are only as strong as the people who uphold them. The case also underscored a paradox of the Trump era. His administration's aggressive policies often galvanized opposition in ways that ultimately reinforced the very systems he sought to dismantle. Safety committees would later adopt a similar approach to regulation, loudly announcing their existence while quietly doing very little. The Constitution, it turns out, was not written in pencil. The fifth story. WhatsApp introduces username-based messaging, ditching phone numbers. In a move aimed at enhancing user privacy, WhatsApp announced in June 2026 that it would allow users to chat via usernames instead of phone numbers. The change was designed to address growing concerns about privacy and data security, particularly in an era where phone numbers were increasingly tied to identity verification across multiple platforms. While the update was widely praised by privacy advocates, it also raised questions about potential misuse. Critics warned that anonymity could enable harassment, scams, and other forms of abuse, forcing WhatsApp to walk a fine line between privacy and accountability. This was a classic example of the tech industry's approach to problem solving in the 2020s. Fix one issue, create two more. By 2050, username-based messaging is the norm, though the subscription wars of the late 2030s would later see companies charging users for the privilege of remaining anonymous. The move also reflected a broader shift in digital communication, where the line between privacy and obscurity became increasingly blurred. As for WhatsApp's balancing act, it's worth noting that humanity's favorite strategy of postponing problems was alive and well. Many of the platform's moderation challenges were simply deferred to future updates. Privacy achieved. Accountability postponed. As we reflect on June 30, 2026, we see a world grappling with the consequences of its own ingenuity, wealth and secrecy, preparation and procrastination, principle and pragmatism. The past, as these stories remind us, is not just a record of events, but a mirror of our enduring contradictions. This has been the Future Archive. The past, as always, is not going anywhere.